Hey, and welcome to episode number 10 of the Viral Nation. In this week's episode, we are going to talk Daytona Supercross. We're going to talk the Pacific Northwest Racing Association's round 1 and 2 here in Washington State. We're going to talk to Denny Stevenson from the Moto X Dream 360 Fantasy Motocross League. We are going to talk about a lot more. Dealer of the Week, Goggle of the Week. Stay tuned for the Viral Nation.
Wake up at 5 a.m. Gotta be at the track at 10. It's time to ride. All of this anticipation to ride in the Viral Nation.
Hey, and welcome to episode number 10 of the Viral Nation. We are so happy that you joined us today. We are always excited to have you guys on board with us to sit here and talk motocross, learn a little bit about Viral brand goggles, and then kind of just, talk a little bit about my experiences in the motocross world. We got a big show for you today. We're pretty excited about it. We're also going to talk about Daytona and the stuff that happened there. We're going to talk about the PRO series here in Washington State. They had round 1 and 2 last weekend. They had the Pac West series before that, so race season's really starting to get into full swing. But before we do that, we really wanted to give a shout out and let the Leach family know that everyone at Viral Brand and the Viral Nation, our hearts go out to you. We had a longtime promoter up in this area who lost their lives in an auto accident a few weeks ago. Didn't address it last week because I wasn't really sure how to address it, but I just want to say to the Leach family and to Bob and Linda that you'll be missed. Even though I didn't get down to your track all the time, you guys were always super gracious to me and my family. My son, when he was growing up, I grew up racing with the Leach boys, and our hearts go out to you guys. You guys are in our prayers. And we wish nothing but the best for the Leach family, and hope that you guys are able to heal up and remember your family and your mom and dad the way that we do, which is with just great fond memories. So that's our little intro to the Leaches out of Albany, who ran the Albany MX motocross track for forever. Let's do my little opening statement. And the internet's a pretty funny thing, right? You watch the internet and everybody has an opinion, and that's great. I mean, that's part of free speech, right? You can kind of say and do what you want. But I look at things with context, right? I've been racing for a long time, and I grew up in an era when racing was very physical, right? And so for us, bumping into people, or at least for me, bumping into people was not a big deal. And so I've talked about it before on the podcast, but if someone bumped me, I'd hit them back even harder. And so I was watching the interview with Kenny Roczen, who was definitely fired up, and then the response from Cooper Webb, and it was very funny because back in the day, that same advantage, someone would have drove Kenny onto the ground, right? Because there wasn't a lot of cheap shots going on, but it was very physical back in the day. And watching Kenny get upset was pretty interesting because Coop ran him wide and it did cost him a couple spots, but he didn't put him down. I mean, what would have happened to Kenny if Coop would have put him on the ground or off the track, right? And he would have had to start, instead of 6th place or 7th place start, wherever he ended up with, he would end up in 22nd place start. So I find that pretty interesting, and the internet makes things so much more fun because you get to watch these guys kind of make their little quips and stuff, and it's pretty funny. And then to watch all the people that are just absolutely passionate keyboard warriors is just that's almost more entertaining than the actual race sometimes. I mean, it's pretty funny. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this today with Denny Stevenson when he comes on the show here in a little bit. But being on the Moto X Dream 360 Facebook page and talking back and forth with all the people on there is a lot of fun during the event because, and then even after the event when things start coming out and Coop responds back to Kenny and Kenny's made his statement and all that fun stuff. And then you get the people weighing back in. It's pretty fun stuff. I will say this though, on the battle of mental toughness, Kenny is a monster when he's coming back from from injury, right, on the mental side. But Coop has got in that guy's head, and I don't really see any way around Kenny not putting Coop on the ground or getting super aggressive with him for him not to regain that high ground, right? Because right now, Coop's a mental monster. I mean, he has been that way for a couple years now. And when he starts getting on a roll, he gets in people's heads. You know, he burned Kenny a few years ago at the finish line 2 times, I think. He burned him again, I think, this year. I mean, it's been one of those things where Coop just kind of has the upper hand when it comes to the Rocks and Cooper battles. So it would be interesting to see what happens as Coop and Kenny kind of keep going throughout the rest of the series. See if Kenny can muster up some mental toughness and go back after Coop. It makes great television. It makes for great racing. It makes for a great storyline. And so I'm really excited about watching the rest of this series the way that it's playing out. All right, let's go on. Oh, yes. So I got my notes over here because I got a lot going on today, and I really wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything. You may not know this. This show is not scripted. So when we sit down, I bullet point out real quickly kind of what I want to cover, but there's no script to it. So I kind of just go off the top of my head. So that's why sometimes you see me stumble around a little bit. Is because of that. The other thing too is, before we get going, is I also work really hard on the audio. I've tried to get the lighting to be a little more consistent and trying to make this podcast more and more professional as we go along. And I think we're getting there, but I want to appreciate you guys sticking with me as we've kind of had different lighting and different sound and all this other stuff that we've had going on. Let's talk about the history of scrubbing. We're not going to go back through a full history, but I'm going to tell you that I had a really interesting post earlier this week. Somebody had posted on there a picture of somebody and said, you know, this is back before scrubbing. And it was a video that I had posted of an old race from back in the 80s, 89 or 90, I forget what year it was. And this gentleman had posted on there, he said, you know, hey, this is before you were born. This was before scrubbing was invented. And I just want to, for the record, you know, scrubbing was a thing back in the 80s when I started racing. I was pretty proficient at it and used to get pretty flat over a couple jumps here and there. Smale was even better at it than I was. It used to drive me crazy. We'd be racing each other. We'd scrub a jump and I'd look over beside me and he'd be another 2 feet below me. It used to just drive me nuts. And then you know, so scrubbing was a thing. But you know, in all honesty, Bubba, you know, he's the king of scrubs. He just took it to a whole new level. And the kids today have just taken what we had done and have just perfected it and made it even better. So scrubbing isn't something that hasn't been around. It's just something that's become much more prominent, where you have junior riders now trying to scrub, and you've got, you know, and you got the pro guys doing just a heck of a job getting super low, and you know, and the thing about scrubbing is, it isn't really a show off move. It's really a fast, you know, you can hit the face of the jump so much harder. Scrub the height off of your jump, and then you'll cross the gap at a lower level, right, and get back on the ground faster. Because when you're in the air and you're hanging up there, you're not going anywhere. You're just kind of floating. And if you can get back to the ground before the guy beside you, now you're driving again. So that's why scrubbing is such a great tool when you're racing. I also want to talk about the knack-knack. And the reason I want to talk about the knack-knack is because, again, it's something that wasn't prominent when I was a kid. And McGrath definitely is the person that brought the knack-knack to the forefront. But you know what? I was watching a moto video the other day, and I'm going to pop a picture up here in just a second. But you know, RJ at the Rodeo Cup, I believe it was a Rodeo Cup. It might have been another Supercross. But he was doing basically flat scrub knack-knacks back in 1985. 1985, before the knack-knack was a thing like it is today, where McGrath does his deal, right? Johnson would come off the finish line, and the tabletops weren't big back then, and he would be completely sideways, and then he would step his leg over the bike, basically like McGrath did. And so again, McGrath took it to the next level, right? Just like we talked about Alex Hodges last week about taking freestyle to the next level. McGrath took the knack, which Johnson was doing, and had taken it to the next level. So very, very cool history in motocross. Very cool to watch the sport always continually improve and get bigger and get better and do that stuff. And I just love that about the sport. All right, so coming up next, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back from that break, we are going to talk viral brand in the news. That's the new section that we've added to this. Viral brand in the news will be coming up next, right after this commercial break. Our 2021 Comp Series Goggle Collection was inspired and designed by Rockstar Energy and a 2019 Nitro World Games Super Hooligan Flat Track Champion, Andy DeBrino. Andy brings his unique design and inspiration with his new Signature Series goggle to the viral brand for 2021 and beyond. Our 2021 Comp Series goggles has some outstanding features. Outriggers, soft flex frame, 50mm sublimated strap, one run of non-slip, and the best fit in the industry for any goggle under $40. If you're looking for viral brand goggles, check out shop.theviralbrand.com or find a dealer near you. Isn't it time you go viral? Viral brand has been all over the internet lately. We want to thank the guys over at Motocross Action Magazine. They've been using our goggles pretty regularly in their 2021 bike reviews and in their shootouts. Want to thank David Pingree over at Vital MX. He's been using our goggles for a bunch of the bike reviews. And if you want to check them out, we're going to have a few of them playing right here. Right now, this is this one here happens to be the Vital MX RM 450 that Pingree had done the review. Now, they didn't review the goggles, but they definitely reviewed the bike, and they used our goggles in that, and really appreciate that and love the fact that they like the goggle enough to be able to wear it on a regular basis. You can check the links down below. We're going to have links to all of the videos, and you can also go on to theviralbrand.com, go to our news section, and you can see, not only can you see all of the videos that we have going on, the Viral Nation videos there, but you can also find other news like these videos that we have playing right now. All right, let's talk Daytona Supercross. Oh my gosh, let me get my notes out. Daytona was absolutely crazy. Let's start with the 250 class. They had 63 riders trying to qualify for the main event at Daytona, and it was a stacked field, stacked all the way through. You had 50-some riders in there that were all within a few seconds of each other that were all hauling the mail. Big lap times, and just a really, really fun track layout, it looked like to me. And, you know, we were looking at the 250 class and looking at their timing, their times and all that stuff, and they were pretty consistent. McAdoo with his first win, watching that guy come across the finish line, that was just absolutely epic, right? But before we get to the main event, let's talk a little bit about the carnage that was the 250 class West Coast so far this year. Round one of the West Coast round took out a ton of riders. And it was absolutely crazy how much carnage there was at round one. And then Daytona didn't go any better. I mean, they had 2 red flags in the LCQ for the 250 class, plus a red flag in one of the heat races. And man, it's been a brutal season for the guys in the 250 West class. And so let's just hope that they can have some good racing going forward, but the guys can stay healthy and stay on their bikes and settle down for the rest of the season so that they can make it to the final, because I love watching racing, but I don't like seeing all the red flags, don't like seeing all the injuries, and that's not part of the sport that I enjoy. I really enjoy the racing part of it. A good knockdown's not a big deal, but a big carnage and being hauled off, not so cool. So let's run through the. You guys probably watched the race. I'm not going to go too much into it, but watching McAdoo in the main, awesome. Haymaker, you know, they really barely covered the guy in second place, right? Pierce Brown with an amazing ride. Jordan Bailey with a great ride. Alex Martin, you know, coming back and putting in a pretty decent ride. But let's get to the main event results here really quick. There we go. All right. So in the main event results here, I was super excited to watch McAdoo with his win. I just said that a minute ago. Styles Roberts is pretty cool to see. That guy, I've watched that little guy since he was on 50 cc's back when my son was racing. We were traveling. Some of the amateur nationals were down in Texas. Got to see him and Ryder DeFrancisco and seeing these guys now, Pierce Brown and all those guys coming up and being players now in the 250 class is really cool to say. So super good job for Styles Roberts, Pierce Brown, Justin Cooper, man. You know, that was a heck of a ride. I mean, he salvaged a lot of points. It could have been a lot worse, but he salvaged it. Didn't ride his best ride by far. Marchbanks was right there. Hunter Lawrence, and then Alex Martin. Alex Martin finished 7th. Jake Swoll, that was a pretty cool ride from him. Would have liked to see him be a little farther forward, but I think that was not a bad ride. Cody Schock, that kid has been riding really well. Another good finish. And Jordan Smith running out the top 10, which Jordan had some issues and stuff, but I think salvaging a top 10 in a Supercross main event is still a decent ride. Even though some of us keyboard warriors like we are now think that he should have done better. When you're on the motorcycle and doing it, man, that's just tough. Let's talk about the 450 class. Let's start by talking about the return of Chase Sexton and his monster leap during practice. And watching Chase, that was a big hit, man. Just a big hit. And the sad part was he went from the wall jump to the first jump before the table. And I watched that all day thinking, man, someone should be jumping that thing. You know, we've all lived through the era of James Stewart, right, where he would hook up big sections like that nobody else was doing. And I kept thinking somebody should have done that section. And then I saw him do it, and what was crazy was he didn't short it, right? I thought he came up short, and that's why he got all the stitches and knocked out teeth. But what ended up happening is he overjumped it. And that was nuts. And if he could have just came up perfect the first time, I think he would have done it every single lap from then on. And that was a big leap. But it was good to see him back. Glad that he gutted it out in the main event. Heat races were a lot of fun to watch. But the man of the hour, right? The man of the hour, bar none, all day long, from heat race 1 to all the way to the main event, Aaron Plessinger. Aaron Plessinger was a man on a mission at Daytona. Not only did he look amazing, he ran down Coop, he ran down Barsha, he absolutely, the only person he didn't run down Tomac. But you're at a hybrid track, right? You're at a Supercross / outdoor track, and we know that Tomac is almost unbeatable on an outdoor track. And looking at that, Aaron Plessinger in 2021 is what we expected to see from him when he came out of the 250 class. And it is awesome to see because as I said, I really like the kid. I've got a chance to meet him a couple times, and he's just a really genuine guy. And his podium's response was absolutely was awesome. I'm not going to go through all the heat races, but let's talk real quickly about the main event. Tomac obviously needed this race badly to put himself back into the conversation, at least for the championship. With Coop finishing 2nd, you really didn't see you didn't really see Tomac jump up in points a ton, but it definitely was something he mentally needed. And I've heard now rumors that he's got another year on his contract, which probably aren't rumors, probably the truth. I just haven't done the research to find out. And if that's true, you'll probably see him for another year. But I think you're seeing the last few years of the Tomac racing family and all the stuff that goes on in a life. I think he's been doing this a long time. I think you'll see him step away from the sport here in the next few years. But it was great to see the old Tomac back because man, the guy when he's on rails, he is on rails. Good ride for Cooper Webb. His second place, he got passed by Plessinger. Plessinger went into second. Plessinger then gapped him, and then I think realistically, I think Plessinger faded a little bit the last few laps. Coop caught him on the last lap, last straightaway, made the pass for his second place finish, which was great for Coop. Aaron, though, awesome job, right? Top three, first time ever podium in the 450 class, and he earned it. It wasn't a bunch of fall down stuff. I mean, he earned that third place, and he did it right out of the gate. The bike looked good. He looked good. He was smoking fast, so that was really cool. Roxon, wow, he battled, right? He had a lot of problems. He shuffled back, made some mistakes, missed a rhythm section. Could have been a lot worse for him, but he gutted it out. Malcolm Stewart had a hell of a ride, too. He got up there, started mixing it up. Actually, I think he was catching Plus a little bit for a little bit. That was pretty cool. Barsha, kind of a quiet sixth place. That was kind of And then Chase Sexton. Sexton really, for all the adversity coming back from an injury, then having all the face lacerations and all that stuff, I thought, putting it in the top 10 was a good comeback for him, right? I thought that was a really good comeback for him. Good ride for Bogle in 9, and then Wilson quietly in 10th. All of those were good finishes. Dylan Fernandez, after his really hot start, is kind of just settled in. 450 class is tough. I mean, it is a tough series. You got to figure that Dean Wilson is a West Coast 125 champion or East Coast 125 champion. I forget what coast he won it on. Bogle is a champion, right? You've got Savachi who was leading the championships. It was like second place. I mean, Mitchell Olenberg is right there, right? You got all these Max Anstie from the MXGPs. This class is stacked from top to bottom, and guys making the main events in the 450 class are studs. Period. End of story. If you're making main events in the 450 class, you're a stud. Period. End of story. No debate. Because this season, it is a really, really tough class to be in. And let's not forget about the record-setting task that Tomac did, tying, it really isn't, take two. Hey, and let's not forget Tomac tying Ricky Carmichael for the most wins at Daytona with this win this last weekend. Tomac now sits at 5 wins and ties Carmichael, which is a pretty awesome feat in itself. And if, as I said earlier, I think Tomac might not be coming back, but if he does come back next year, he will be a force at Daytona for sure. All right, that is Daytona 2021. Coming up next, we're going to talk to David Hogan. He's our physio from Australia to talk about the injury updates after we left Daytona and get kind of an update on what we've got looking forward to the next round of Supercross.
All right, guys, it's Viral Nation episode 10. It's time for the Always Moto injury update. I'm David Hogan, the Australian physiotherapist responsible for the best moto injury content you haven't yet seen in your social media feed. To find us, just search Always Moto in your favorite social media app and then hit follow. But let's jump into those injury updates this week from Daytona. So we start off, we've got Grant Harlan, had a reasonably big crash. He's got a big list of injuries. Titling those injury list is a bit of a small bleed on his brain, which isn't a great thing to have happen. And it will probably be something that has to get monitored over the next few weeks to see how that recovers. And that will potentially be the thing that holds his recovery back as to whether they can confirm that it's not going to be a risk for him for re-injury along the way. But he also sustained a broken left elbow, a broken right wrist, a broken rib, and a punctured lung, just to cap off everything that he's got going on there. So he'll be out. In terms of the bone fractures, that'll be at least a 6 to 8 week recovery time frame. But like I said, the small bleed on the brain is probably the bigger issue in all this. But I dare say he will be out for Supercross at least. Moving on, it didn't stop him from racing the main event, but Chase Sexton had a big moment in his qualifying. If you check out his Instagram account, there's a video of him trying to jump off the wall jump and land just before the tabletop, but he misjudges the distance, smashes his face into his handlebars, breaks a couple of teeth, ends up with stitches in his lips, and just some general, he's probably going to end up with black eyes. It hasn't quite got to the full black eye moment yet, but he's on his way. He's got some pictures of that on his Instagram story, so check that out. But he was able to ride through, so he should be all fine. He will be sore this week when he's trying to put his helmet on, and that might just slow him down just a little bit, but I don't think it'll affect him from missing any events. Jordan Smith. Now, funnily enough, last episode, I spoke about Jordan and just needing to stay off the ground. Well, he couldn't. He did it again. He crashed. Didn't actually hurt himself from what I understand from the actual crash, but another rider's foot peg managed to get him in the butt of all places and caused him to get a cut that needed 20 stitches. So luckily for the Alpine Stars medical unit, they got to stitch his butt back together. So pretty much would have been a nice friendly moment between the two of them there while they're getting that sorted out. He was able to ride, but as you saw, his result probably wasn't the greatest. I think he was out around 8th for the main event. And so that at that point in time, obviously adrenaline's kicked in. He's probably on some painkillers, was able to get through it. The issue for him is going to be trying to ride during the week, and then he probably have more issues when he gets to the point of actually going back to the next race. That wound is going to actually start to tighten up. It's going to basically scab over, which is all great in terms of the healing process, but that's going to actually create it more painful and actually potentially rip open when he's actually trying to ride again. So he might actually be at risk of not racing an event or two coming up, or he might try to and then have issues where he tears that open, has to get it restitched. So I dare say it's going to slow him down. His results are probably not going to be fantastic for the next couple of weeks until that thing really heals up and basically back to normal skin integrity there for him. So unlucky for him, but again, he just needs to stay off the ground. Another one that listed for an injury was Remy Alves, crashed in the LCQ. Just some general, soreness from the crash, but no major issues listed for Remy. His updates on his Instagram page too. But he is aiming to be at the next round at Arlington. We have next on the list is Martin Costello. He came into the event with some interesting news on his that he updated in regards to a hand issue that he's been dealing with since November. He had put up a little x-ray that he had done during the week where he'd finally gone back and got some more scans done. And he's actually got a tiny little chip of bone in between the joint of the finger and the hand, which is basically stopping him from making a full fist, which, as you guys know, when you need to make a full fist to hold onto the handlebars so you can control the bike properly. He actually had a very interesting technique that him and his mechanic obviously come up with, where they cut another grip and stuck it over the top of the existing grip to fatten out that space so that he didn't have to close his hand as far to try and manage that injury and let him keep riding through. And he was riding through, and he was planning to do so. But he had another big crash whilst trying to protect that hand, wasn't able to hold on to the bike quite as well as he probably would have liked, and then just launched off the wall jump. Bit of a spiral turn crash. No update as to whether he got more injured, a new injury as such, or whether he just, beat up again. But he is expected with that hand injury. He does need to have surgery to take that bone fragment out, which he's trying to delay to the end of Supercross, I gather from his update. But depending on what happened on the weekend, whether he changes that plan or not, we'll find out in the next few days. And then we go to, Ryan Sipes, interesting enough, got cleaned out, as everyone saw, right before that first red flag in the heat race. He got up holding a hand and a finger. And initially when I watched him do that, it looked like he was trying to maybe support something or put something back in. Maybe, fingers you can get dislocated, pull them out, put them back in, away they go. It kind of looked like he did that. He didn't mention any of that in his update that he's done since the event. He did say that he has had an x-ray and he's cleared from that side of things for his hand, and he was able to race the rest of the night, albeit probably going to have a very sore hand during the week. But he's apparently going to be back racing some more Supercross later in the season. So ideally that means that he's all fine and good. And we'll see how it goes along. Joey Crown. Bit of a rough day for him. Joey's had a bit of a history last season with some concussions. And if you check out his Instagram, he actually went to a pretty cool brain trauma clinic near to him in the US there, and just basically did a whole bunch of brain training post concussion last time to try and help him recover. I gather he had a decent concussion last year. And he was in this big ball spinning around, pointing lasers at targets, trying to retrain the brain, which is really cool. Cool way of basically regaining your, your spatial awareness, and just getting the brain working and active for those, high intense tasks that we do when we're racing. But he's also had another crash at Daytona this weekend. Potentially, he hasn't actually said that there's a concussion as such, but it said that he's going to take a few days off. And from watching the crash, I would say that he's definitely, hit his head in some form, and maybe he just needs a bit more time because of that past history that he's got. He's just going to take some time to be safe and well before he gets back on and races again. Moving on, we've got Brighton Carroll. Now, his privateer guy came across his update because I was checking out that he didn't actually start or finish the heat race and didn't start the LCQ. So I figured there must have been some good reasons for that. Came across his update on Instagram. Definitely a good reason for it. On the opening laps of that heat race that he was in, he basically came up short on the triple, broken sternum, 2 broken ribs, and a broken foot. And he also, interesting enough, said that he blacked out after the crash. Now, the blacking out part of it, not necessarily a head issue, just basically, I'd say, from when he's broken the ribs and the sternum, and then probably impacted the lungs, knocked all the wind out of him, basically couldn't get enough oxygen in, pretty much just would have passed out. So he's doing well now from that side of things, but the sternum fracture is going to be an interesting one. If anyone out there has had one before, you'll know that they sometimes can be a little bit tricky with healing, and they can sometimes end up having a bit of a hump in the chest, right in the center where the sternum is, because they're actually 2 pieces of bone that basically forms into one. But if you crack it right through that joint, which is the general common way that the sternum breaks, they can sort of heal, in a bit of a point and sort of stick out more than they actually sit flat. So depending on how his healing goes, you can't cast the chest area as such and, immobilize it perfectly. So it means that the chest is always moving. When every time you take a breath while this sternum's broken and trying to recover, it's moving. So the healing process is a little bit hard to get done, and it doesn't always heal perfectly. But ideally, he has a good, easy process with that. He keeps off the arm exercises or anything, keeps relatively, low activity rates, and you just recover really easily, hopefully. But we'll see how he goes with that process. A few other ones that I'm going to list here. Not 100% certain they got injuries, but again, noticed they had a DNF and then either a DNS or that, that was the end of the event. So wasn't sure exactly what was the issue with them. A few of them have put out little updates, and I've been chasing them down for some more information, but haven't got that back yet. And this is where then following us helps you find out that stuff. We find it out later in the week, right before the next event. We put it up on the Instagram. You get to find it, get to see it, and stay up as current as you can on what these guys are up to with their injury updates. But so those guys that are in this category, Austin Politelli, he's actually coming back from a concussion a couple of weeks back, so I'm hoping he hasn't done something similar. But he had a DNF. Dylan Swartz, the team put out an update for him that he's banged up. We're chasing up them as to see if there's anything specific with that update, or if he's just a general soreness and going to be back on the bike next week. Justin Rando, also another DNF, and Brock Tickle had one. Now, from different sources, he's okay, but again, chasing him up to see if there's anything specific that he's injured that might be an issue to stop him from getting to the next event. A couple of updates from our last episode that I thought I'd just touch on to make sure you guys are still up to date with where things are up to. There's been nothing new on Jeremy Martin's dislocated shoulder. There are some rumors swirling around that maybe he's going to try and come back for Arlington or Atlanta. Nothing concrete here. It will all depend on whether that shoulder stays in place and stays stable as he's trying to do his recovery, and whether when he gets back on the bike in the next short period of time, if he's able to sustain that and have strength. I dare say there's probably a fair push for him just to stay healthy and off the bike and just focus on getting it stable, ready for the outdoors, but we'll see how that goes. Alex Martin, as everyone saw, was back at Daytona, had a reasonable main event, did fade late in the event, and that's probably just a sign that he's not 100% back to to full health post that concussion he had at the opening round for the West Coast guys. And it might just be that, he came back and was capable of riding, but probably just, with everything going on with the post-concussion, just maybe needed a touch bit more time. Not needing enough to stop him from racing, but just maybe, could have helped. But, it's all money, one event. Who knows how much these guys get when they actually turn up just for the event and ride. So, and then we go on to, the trio of collarbone fractures from last episode from Orlando 2, Adam Cincerulo, Adam Antigna, Sean Cantrell. No further updates on these guys. Not 100% sure, but pretty sure that Adam Cincerulo has also had surgery, because there's been some Instagram stories of him out and about with nothing, no arm in a sling or anything like that. So looking good for him. But Adam Antigna and Sean Cantrell definitely post-surgery, just trying to focus on getting back for Atlanta. Zach Osborne. Now, we actually said last time that we thought he was going to be on track for Daytona with that lumbar bulging disc that he has. But whether he aggravated it further, maybe it's a bit more severe. Maybe he had multiple level disc bulges that he didn't sort of report on initially when he let everybody know that was what was going on. But he wasn't able to ride Daytona. Hopefully this is just a one extra week sort of situation that he needed just to get fully fit and healthy, and he'll be back next round. But we'll have to keep an eye on that and see if anything changes there. Similar for Justin Brayton, he had that crash before Orlando 2. Had some bruising to the ribs we spoke about. Thought he was going to be back because he did that Moto Fight Club car race that he did, but he just obviously wasn't good enough for Supercross this week. But he's aiming to be back for the next round and should be all back, hopefully fully healthy for those guys there at Marco Fondo. But that's basically the list for this week. So as we mentioned last week, we're starting to use this hashtag injuries are a part of Moto. We want you guys to drop that on any injury update you see from any of the riders out there. We also want you to tag Always Moto so that we can keep up to date and keep you guys with some more information on these updates that come out. And also, if you think we got any of this stuff wrong in these episodes, we're human. It happens. But we want you to hit up a comment in the YouTube comments below, or send me a DM on Instagram, just so we can have that update as to whether it is right or wrong, and we can go from there. But otherwise, that's all we've got for this week's Viral Nation episode. Until next time.
Hey, David, thank you so much for doing this section with us. We love having you on. We love your take on the Supercross world and explaining all the injuries and stuff, and really appreciate having you here every week. David will be back next week with another injury update, and we are excited to have him as part of the Viral Nation. All right, guys. Hey, we were excited to, here at the Viral Nation to welcome Denny Stevenson, the 1989 East Coast champ. Is that correct? 1990 East Coast champ. Yes, very cool. And also the owner of Moto MX Dream 360.com, which is the fantasy league that I belong to. Denny and I were just kind of chit-chatting about that here just a minute ago. But Denny, how you doing?
I'm very good, brother. It's good to talk to you, Scott. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. Wanted to have you on the show. Obviously, the fantasy motocross thing has been something that's new for me this year. I've kind of seen guys doing it. Decided this year to kind of pop onto your deal, and kind of wanted to talk a little bit. How did you get started with this whole fantasy motocross deal?
We originally were the first website to go fantasy supercross motocross back in it was either the late 90s or early 2000s. One of my really good friends that didn't race, had nothing to do with racing, it got me into fantasy March Madness basketball. We picked players from various college teams that made the tournament, and so basically you wanted good players on good teams, because as the teams lost, you lost that player, and then you get their points they scored. And I never watched any college basketball, and I watched damn near every single game of March Madness Day. This is probably mid 90s about then. And so then I started like a pen and paper league with some friends and my dad and some buddies, and we'd kind of keep track of the results. And so my buddy that got me into fantasy basketball, we put together a plan for the original Moto X Dream on a bar napkin at a cigar bar one night, similar to how they got Supercross started, is the rumor. And so we ran that for about 5 or 6 years. We gave away race bikes, we gave away trips to the US Open, all kinds of stuff. And it was about the time I was in California working for Smith, doing the TV gig, going to all the races and stuff. I kind of was running out of time to run the site properly. So we decided to sell it, and we sold it to our buddy, Steve Flanders, Body Bag, who's back playing the game right now. And then he sold it over to someone else, another dealership, and then they shut it down. So through the years, I was still continuing to do a pen and paper league with my buddies. We do a pick 'em, it's called. We pick like 10 guys and pick in order the top 10, 250, or 450, top 5, 250. And we just have been doing that for about the last 5, 6, 7 years. And so when the corona, the pandemic hit and they shut down Supercross, no races, nothing going on. And so I came up with some different games to kind of keep our thread active and keep us watching races online and whatnot, old YouTube clips and videos. And so that's how I developed the salary league that we have now, because we couldn't really base off picking old races. And that's kind of how we have the retro games that we play now, and the salary based league. And my girlfriend Sarah sees how much time I was putting into this little hobby with my buddies, and I was still doing pen and paper. I didn't have a laptop, and so I didn't have spreadsheets and stuff put out. She gave me her laptop to use. She goes, "You got to do this much. There's got to be an easier way for you to do this. And you're spending so much damn time on this. You should take what you enjoy and let's expand it." And so So I called my old partners and buddies, Scot and Brett, who was original with me on the Moto Extreme, 15 years ago. And we partnered up again and got this Moto Extreme 360 going.
Man, it's a lot of fun. I love the motocross, or I love the Supercross stuff that's going on. Really like the vintage stuff, right? The retro game. You and I were talking through the text messages. I picked David Bailey, which in '85 he was like he was a top 4 guy every round. And of course, the round I picked was Seattle, where he knocked himself out. And I was standing in the corner back in '85. You could stand on the track and watch Supercross, right? And so I was standing in practice and watched him crash and knock himself out. And I kind of laughed when I was making my picks, thinking, that's the only race that they're going to pick is going to be Seattle. And sure enough, in the vintage one, I ended up with Seattle. We got 0 points for Bailey. This absolutely cracked me up. I just found it very, very funny. But it's super cool. I was actually just doing my picks this morning before we got on for tonight's retro round.
Yeah, that's obviously at the time when we didn't have any races going on, that was the easiest way to pick some stuff. And like you, I watched those races then. I've followed them on Motocross Action, and so for me to be able to play the games and kind of, I've always kind of felt is that our sport doesn't really embrace the past as much as it should, the history of the sport.
Yeah.
And so by me kind of dipping into some of these 80 seasons and then this, like, especially this latest retro we did with 85, 1997 season, the 2005 season, and just kind of taking the top 12 or 13 from each of those 3 seasons. I was just talking with my buddy Husenberg, who's actually battling for this title in this latest retro game. I think it's one of my most enjoyable games because there's 34 riders, and I can see how many teams are picked. So after about 34 teams are picked, almost all 34 riders have been used.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool and pretty crazy, and it makes it really even. It's as much crapshoot as it is kind of knowing the numbers and the results, because at the end of the day, the races are randomly drawn. So if you think you got some, like right now, the McGrath, I think it's 22nd in points of the 34 riders because the first 2 rounds that were chosen were terrible rounds for McGrath. And if you could ever imagine Jerry McGrath being 2 rounds in any season or any type of game and being 22nd, it kind of gives you a perspective of how random some of this stuff can be.
Well, I got to say, picking 97 as a season, though, because if you would have picked 96 or earlier, it's almost all McGrath, right? So he would have been an easy pick. 97 was a year that he had the triple cramp brake, and he had all those little weird anomalies when he was with Suzuki, right? And so it does make it a lot more difficult, because you can't just check the box for McGrath and know you got to win, which is kind of cool.
And that's where it comes in with the salary base. if say we had the 96 season when McGrath won every round, well, his salary would be so astronomical that you'd have, if you wanted to choose him, having a salary cap as we kind of base the game on, and is that you wouldn't be able to have that good happy medium of the guys in the $500,000 to $600,000 range. You'd have to be down in a lower range. So that's kind of why I really dig the salary base, is the fact that if you want to go real heavy on the top with guys are going to win, you're also going to be able to more affordable riders who are more going to run 8th to 15th some rounds, or maybe possibly even being it out, because it's based on the salaries based on the season's point total. And then as the season progresses, their points, as they score points, their salaries will change, but it's still based off that initial first salary base. So, and I'm still modifying, there's no real science to it. I'm trying to make it as even as possible, as competitive as possible, and also that the casual fan can still come in and play and be competitive with the guy who maybe is laying out spreadsheets with all the past results,
Yeah. I don't do that.
No, and I have friends. I have friends that do. Especially right now, this last round, I know the guys battling for the title or have went back and looked at all the old results and wrote them all down and sent me their spreadsheet, and I'm laughing, and they got all color coded, and I play a lot of fantasy football. I don't know if you play fantasy football. I mean, I want to make the information as readily available to our members and players as you can if you're playing on ESPN or Yahoo or something like that. A lot of people think I share too much information when even when on the normal 2020 or 21 Supercross season, I like to put everyone's salaries and kind of give everybody kind of a cheat sheet that shows their lap times after time practice and stuff.
Yeah.
I want to make it as easy as possible, as simple as you can just click on, when you're playing fantasy football and see, hey, what this guy's has done per game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So let's talk about 2021. Hell of a season, huh? I mean, these guys have been going at it, and that 450 class is crazy stacked. Crazy.
It really, the top guys have kind of, at least the first few have separated themselves, but you can see that in our salary. They're far more expensive than the other guys, because they're pretty much assured of a top 4 pick or finish. But it's great. We were talking before we went on camera how our Saturdays are full, whether we're at the races or at home. We're watching race day live. We're listening to Danny on those guys and watching the lap times, and it's definitely it's so cool that the just the TV coverage, as we talked about as well, is just second to none to be able to do this and keep up to date. And the lap times, I just having transponders when we raced would have been nice. Knowing kind of where we were and people at home be able to even see that stuff. It's state of the art. The people that bitch about it need to find something else to do with their lives.
Well, that's that. I had talked about that earlier in the podcast today, that there's people online that have not enough time in their, or way too much time in their day to get super upset about a sport, but it is funny. I was actually talking about Rocks and Coop, right? And I made a post on the Dream 360. One of the posts I think you'd posted about, let it kind of happen when Coop kind of called out, or Roxon called out Cooper, and then Cooper kind of responded back, right? Man, back in the day, you used to have huge battles with Mike Mike Jones in '90, and I remember watching one round. I think he ripped your radiator off your bike or something like that, and it's just racing was a lot more physical back when we were kids,
It's a contact sport, and it's a very, and people complaining that I'm a big Kenny fan. I'm a big Coop fan.
Me too.
I like good racing, and what Coop did was in no way dirty. I think it was racing. If you read the latest Race Rex, I think Jason Thomas covers it and says it almost perfectly. Would you be mad? Hell yes, you'd be mad, like Kenny was. Was it smart what Coop did? It was brilliant. He knew he wasn't on fire at Daytona, that Kenny was riding better. And if I could just run you a little wide and know that there's going to be 4 or 5 guys going to get ahead of you, I mean, why would you not do that? He didn't contact him. He just ran him. I watched the video. He just, and for Kenny, people are calling him whiner now too, or Coop's dirty. Kenny's whining. Man, just enjoy the ride. It's we're getting to where we've been wanting to get to for a while. Where the seasons aren't runaways, where we got 2 riders who genuinely don't really like each other down deep. They kind of tolerate each other. They might have started out the season with some hugs, but I think the season is going to end and hopefully it goes to the wire, and we see some fireworks, kind of like Zach Osborne and Joey Savacci style.
Yeah, I think I've talked about this before, but I was standing next to, I forget his name, the team manager for Monster Energy Kawasaki. I was in the tower when Savacci got taken out by Osborne. That was a good time.
I remember that because that was also that was one of our retro races we had, I think, in the preseason game we did.
Okay.
And that race, Vegas, was chosen, so we had a chance to share it and rewatch it again. And that also was the night of the Eli Tomac train, where he bunches everybody up.
Yep.
Probably one of the single greatest Supercrosses main events that could have ever happened in one evening. And I remember being at home. I think I was by myself, and I'm texting with everybody, and I'm yelling and screaming and jumping up and down. That's my biggest thing is like you. We've raced our entire lives doing this.
Yeah.
And the fanfare and the blood gets pumping, and to throw it in with the fantasy motocross with Moto Extreme 360, and it's just another way to keep following the sport. Yell at the TV, have a little investment into it instead of just watching it.
Yeah.
And like I told you, I got my dad into it as well, and he texted me the other day, and especially after Ty Masherpool. If you had Ty Masherpool, for
I
example,
saw that.
He was very affordable in our game for Daytona. He had put in some decent times, and then was in the last chance qualifier with 2 restarts.
Oh my God.
That whole class, man. I don't even know how they survived at 3 restarts.
I don't either.
Or three drops at the gate. But my dad texted me afterwards, like, man, I'm more nervous watching this shit now than I was when I was your mechanic, So it's pretty awesome, pretty incredible season, and Daytona added just more fuel to the fire.
Yeah, and after Daytona, I don't know if you know Pless very well. I got a chance to meet him a little bit. I was absolutely stoked for that kid because after coming off the 250s, his first couple years with the 450 class, he just didn't click. It didn't look like him. And he really, and he's going to jump in my fantasy pool now. I know that he's going to get more and more expensive, but it was awesome to watch him reel in Coop, get around him. I think he got tired, a little bit, or lost where he was that last lap, because I thought I was pretty bummed that he didn't get second, but it was still just an awesome ride. And of course, him on the podium, 2 best podiums this year, Christian Craig at A1, or whatever it was, the first round,
right.
and then Plessinger at that last round was just awesome. I love the emotion,
it. I mean, you sacrifice everything. I mean, it is your life. It's your livelihood. It's your daily. You live and breathe dirt bikes and the highs and lows of it. And 2 guys, I've known Christian since he was on mini bikes, and seen what he's been through. Aaron, I don't know really well personally, but I sponsored his dad when I was at Smith.
Yeah.
Off-road stuff. So I've met Scott over the years. And obviously Aaron, like you said, Aaron just was not gelling with that 450. And for to come off the success he had, as happy-go-lucky as he is, and as everyone says, a pleasure to be around and always smiling, down deep, that's got to be, it's got to just be turmoil in your life. You know that you're putting in all this work. You're coming off big 250 championships, and then to have back-to-back injuries on the 450 quickly, I'm probably one of the guys as well, written off because you've had those, and you're just, next thing you're always looking for the next guy. So I'm with you. It was awesome to see Aaron not only put together the heat race win, and then backed up in the main event. And it is a shame that last corner and everything, but that won't be remembered.
I watched the Girling Moto MXGP from 1977 last weekend, the weekend there was no Daytona. I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? So I went and found it on YouTube, and I watched the 70 same Girling with Graham Noyce and the Russians and all this stuff. Dude, the racing was just as cool back then, just different, right?
And again, it goes back to embracing the history of the sport, because it is, there's so much great footage out there these days and accessible that obviously we never had. When we were kids, I remember running, I've said this story a bunch of times, to get results and to find out who won the race 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I'd run home from elementary school to open the mailbox, I think on Monday or Tuesdays, to get the cycle news.
Yeah.
So I could figure out what happened. And so And the footage, you rarely got to see any of those type of races. I think Carlsbad GP was about the only one we ever actually got to see on TV.
Yep.
And that was what, 2 months, 3 months after that happened. But the ability to go back and watch these old races is priceless. And that's kind of what I like doing with these retro races, is hopefully I'm bringing people who maybe have seen them and maybe haven't seen them for a while. You know, I think one of the early retro games we did last year, when it was the season was done and time between the first Supercross, was the early 90s, 90, 91, 92. And people were texting me and messaging me, man, it's like, man, I totally forgot how great these races were. You know, there were some serious knockdown battles. And I think, again, is if I can help bring some of the history to the forefront of some of the younger generation that are playing the game, they're into the fantasy sports, fantasy baseball, fantasy football, and they're checking out fantasy Supercross, I think that's just a bonus to it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate taking the time to come on with us today. You know, I know one thing I did want to ask you before we go, you know, you have kind of a different outlook on championships. You know, looking at the guys in the 250 class that are like Coop, right? Not like Cooper, who's trying to take the 250 championship. What advice do you have for guys like that? Because you've been in that battle before, right? Of actually having to understand the pressure and the factory pressure and your sponsor pressure. What do those guys need to do to push it over the edge to finish out the season and actually get that championship?
You know, it's a different game, as you know. Today it is. You know, today it seemed like when we did it, it was a little bit more lighter hearted. You know, for me, I was just doing my job and doing something I enjoyed. It just kind of came naturally. I just raced. It went from amateur to, I turned pro, and I did 2 years with Kawasaki. I signed with Suzuki in 90, and the ball just kept rolling. It just kept elevating, and my success kept elevating. And it was, and then all of a sudden, when the pressure starts coming, you got to remember at the beginning, at the end of the day, that you're doing this because you love it. Excuse my language, but fuck all the sound around you, all the white noise, all the BS. You're doing it because you truly love it, and that's why I think that's why you're seeing guys like Craig getting some success and Plessinger finally getting some success, who've been through the hell and back, because end of the day, Craig stepped away from it and got back doing it because he knows that, man, I need this as much for my own happiness and sanity, and let's try and just keep awake, you know, tune out all the BS. And I think that's something that Cooper and those guys need to do today. And look at McAdoo. McAdoo's been through hell and back.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this stuff's been handed to these kids so young, so early. And I don't really agree with how these factory teams are picking up kids out of Loretta Lynn's. You know, this Levi Kitchen that's coming up, I don't know really anything about him other than I know he kind of came out of nowhere. And my whole theory was, I think I'd rather hire the kid who got 4th and 5th and 3rds at Loretta's than the kid who won everything, because good chance these days he won everything because he's on the best equipment, and he's not even going to appreciate getting a factory ride. The kid who got 4th is going to show up and be as hungry as ever.
Yeah.
Kind of like we did back in the day when, you know, we were ready to run around in our parents' vans and trailers, and then all of a sudden we got a factory ride and we're in a box van. I mean, that was next level. You know, flying to races and shit. We had to drive to all this stuff. So the mentality today is different as far as that goes. So,
well, I could tell you a little bit about Levi. Levi has been around for a long time. He's been gutting it out for years up here in the Northwest, and he was a 50 kid, 60 kid, 80 kid. I know his dad pretty well. I would say really well. I know his dad somewhat, and when my son was racing coming up, we were doing the amateur national stuff. They were doing it on the little kid bikes, and so he clicked this year. The kid was killing it locally up here, and then he just clicked. And I don't know, you never know what kind of success a kid's going to have. You know, Aldridge is a good example of that. Chris was a extremely talented rider, and had just had a bunch of bad things happen and couldn't get his stuff going. But I think Levi, man, with how well he clicked this year, if he can keep that ball rolling, I think you're going to see him be another, you know, Pierce Brown or the next generation of kids, especially for next year, 2022, when he'll actually make his move to the Supercross class.
Yeah,
the
I'm
actual
glad to hear.
class.
I didn't even realize he was up from the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
I just
Yep,
I
yep.
just remember when he showed up at Loretta's and won every moto in the B class. That was last summer.
That was last year. Yeah, 2020.
And so that's what caught my attention, and the fact that everyone was like, "Man, where did he come from?" And I think it's great. I mean, I love a good story, and
Yeah.
I wish that kid the best. And um,
But I totally agree with you. Especially for where I come from. I told my son this. He was always we did Ponca. We didn't do Loretta's. But we did Texas rounds, and we did the West Coast stuff at like Hangtown, the Dodge Classic, and all that stuff. And he was in the intermediate, in the B class. He was always fourth, fifth, sixth place, right? Just a little bit off of like. I can't remember the name guys that he was racing with right now, but he was pretty competitive, but he wasn't winning. And I used to tell him all the time that when you move to the pro class, everything resets, right? Is unless you go from that, you got a Honda Geico ride and you're on a Honda Geico bike where you got all that extra power and all that team support. Most of those guys that are in that you've been racing with all reset because now they're not the dominant guys anymore. They're surrounded by talent, and now you have a chance to move yourself up. And unfortunately, my son ended up getting hurt a ton. He kept breaking bones, but he made a Supercross main event, which was cool, from a dad's standpoint. And he made it in Seattle with my dad there, who was my mechanic for a long time, and that was a really cool deal. But that was my thing with him is you don't have to be you don't have to win all the time. It just helps you get that support as you get older, as you move up.
Yeah, I mean that injuries are huge. Keeping healthy. I mean, look at a great rider like Joey Crown, who's got some opportunities, and it's just weird circumstances. He got himself on the ground, and you can go yard sailing on a crash and walk away, and then there's sometimes you just fall over and break a bone. And man, luck. They all say is luck is preparation and opportunity meet, but then again, sometimes a little voodoo doll and a little voodoo action would be nice too to keep some of these kids healthy and just see how their careers would progress if they had different opportunities, different luck. Like you said, Aldridge, I know he showed brilliance and then got hurt. There was a string of injuries and you're forgotten so quickly. And it makes sense because there's not a lot of spots anymore. There was really little spots when I raced, but now that the longevity of these riders, run into the 30s now.
Yeah.
That means the 450 class is stacked of great riders who have been there for a while. No real chance for these 250 kids to move up. There's no room for them right now.
Yeah.
And although I hate seeing guys like Craig and these guys running the class and J-Mark till they're 29, 30 years old, I mean, what else are they going to do really?
Right.
And then the people trying to say, let's run them all year long. Well, I think we saw that we couldn't even get 10 riders to make it through the GT East series before they were all injured. It just shows how difficult. That's not a bad slam on them. I just saw how difficult the sport is.
Well, look at the West. Look at the West right now. The West. I mean, every time you get done with a round, there's 10 guys that are broken again. Well, 2 or 3 guys every round. Crazy.
We could talk about it forever. I mean, I'm like you. I love the sport. Yeah. I think that was a big. I always said that when I first turned to the GT class after my 125 title. I think I was still jersey chasing. I was still like, oh crap, man, I'm racing with Stanton. I'm racing with Bale, and I think that was a big problem. I think I should have been more like Bradshaw and then Larocco and those type of guys who I grew up with, racing amateur.
Yeah,
it's just that level of like, man, I probably didn't always feel like I belonged when I got into the 2D class as much as I felt like when I was on the 125.
Hey Denny, I just want to say thanks, man, for being on today. I really appreciate it. I'll have a link right down here in the comment section down below. If you guys want to comment, tell us that you're in the league, join the league. They can join at any time, right? Whether they.
Yeah, but I just was talking with my partner, our IT guy, Scott. We're going to make a new price point for Supercross since we're halfway through, 8 rounds left. We're going to make a $9.99 price point to come in. You can win great weekly prizes still. For this season, I want to thank Storm Lake Honda, Jeff Schultz, and Ty Loop Honda. We're giving away a replica race bike, GTF 2021 bike, something similar to what Grant Harlan was out there racing. We're giving that away as a grand prize. We've had great weekly sponsors, Racer X, Fast House, Butchie's Barbecue Sauce. We gave away a bunch of that stuff. God, I can't even think of the other ones. We gave one out. FMF goggles. We gave out a bunch of those. It's just been a great experience so far. The sponsors been great. I've been reaching out to some old friends and stuff. And, We're still building. There's some other obviously bigger one out there. It's got Pulp's been doing great. Steve's got a media empire to fall back on with everybody, and all his followers. So we're just trying to give people a different option, give people another game to play. The retro games are free. You can join and play those at any time. We're gonna have a new one coming up that's gonna start up because obviously we got 2 weekends off coming up. People aren't gonna know what the hell to do without Supercross. Well, we're gonna give people the game to play during the week. We're gonna have a game to play over the weekend, and it's gonna be 4 decades. I'm calling it the zeros because it's gonna be the 1990 season, 2000 season, the 2010 season, and 2020 season. We're going to take like the top 12 in points from each of those 4 great decades and put them all into the riders list, and we're giving them salaries. And so you'll have 8 riders to choose from with I think about a $4 million budget. And we're going to give people something to do during those 2 weekends off and keep them hungry for them when they come back for like Atlanta's the round back they come for. So
are you gonna do just the 250 class, or are you gonna do a 125 class as well?
It'll be just 250 and 450.
Okay.
I've looked at doing, when we do these retro ones, kind of doing with 125 and 250. It's tough because they're separated, and there's usually only like 3 or 4 really good guys at the top.
Yeah.
And it kind of drops down into great riders, but I don't know if a lot of people know them as much as well. So
Yep.
I will figure out something. Right now we're just been attacking. If I keep doing all these retro games, I'm gonna start running out of seasons. So, we're gonna do a retro one for the outdoors with Racer X before the outdoor season starts. So, I just want to keep people entertained, have a good time, and share my passion for the sport and just the history of it as well. And we're competitive. Like I just enjoy the competitiveness of it and playing against instead of my friends, just my friends, playing with everybody in the country and people who have the same love for the sport I do.
Hey man, again, thanks a lot. We appreciate it, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Scott. We'll talk to you soon.
So, hey, coming up next, we are going to talk about the PRO series, the Pacific Northwest Racing Association here in Washington State. We'll be up next right after this commercial break. Our 2021 Factory Series Goggle Collection was inspired and designed by Rockstar Energy and 2019 Nitro World Super Hooligan Champion, Andy DeBrino. And he brings his unique design and inspiration along with his all-new Signature Series goggle to Viral Brand for 2021 and beyond. Our engineers used our soft flex frame, 4 layers of face foam, outriggers, and a 50mm strap to give you the most comfortable goggle in the industry. For more information, check out shop.theviralbrand.com or find a dealer near you. Hey, welcome back. This year, it's March, it's that time of year, and all the motocross local events are starting all over the country. Not only do we have the PRO race happening right now, we have the Daytona amateur stuff going on, and I mean, just so many races across the country now starting to go into full swing. Things have kind of opened up across the country as far as COVID restrictions with motocross racing. At least in Washington State, Oregon, Idaho, Florida, obviously Texas now opened up. So motocross racing is coming back in a full swing, and the crowds have been huge. So the PRO series was this weekend in Richland, Washington. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to give out all the finished results, but I'm going to be pointing up here to a bunch of the riders that did well this weekend at the PRO round. And we want to give a couple shout outs to Brayton Spangle. Brayton was just smoking fast in the 250 and 450 Pro class. He was on a borrowed bike, yet still kind of went 222, 122. He was right there in the mix and finished second overall in both classes. Want to talk about Cody Windgardner. Cody Windgardner winning the schoolboy class, finishing second or third in the 250 and 450 intermediate classes. Cody has been on fire, and we've got so many other riders that just did so well. I'm going to put a bunch of them up right here as we're talking about the PRO series, and really just you can see them kind of rotating through. And remember, guys, the PRO series has been around for a really long time, and it's been a great series. They have been putting on the top of the line series in the Northwest for over 15 years or more, and maybe even 20 years now. And it's just a great event. They host this event at the Horn Rapids complex in Richmond, Washington. Round 1 and 2, 3 and 4 are there, and then they start traveling around the rest of Washington State. And it is, we're talking like 600-700 entries into this last weekend. Big classes, big pro classes, big intermediate classes, and big beginner classes. 50 classes are huge, and it's just a great event. If you're if you're wanting to be that next level rider, you're trying to get to that next level, then you need to go do the bigger events. It's great to start out your small local tracks. And then you want to, the next thing after the small local tracks is you want to do your local big series. And that is exactly what the PRO series. It's the biggest of the local series in all of the Washington, Oregon, and Idaho areas. There has been and it was great. I didn't get a chance to make the event this weekend, unfortunately, but I did get a chance to look at some of the results, and there were riders all over the place using our goggles, from Kyler Webb to we've got a new rider with the Halterman Mx Pro Experience, which is a really cool deal that Justin Halterman and Halterman RV, the big RV dealer here in the Northwest, put together. And that program is that he bought a couple motorcycles, kids bikes, a 50 and a 65. He went out and got a gear sponsor, went out and got a goggle sponsor, which Viral Brand's the goggle for that team. And what they do is they take the bikes to the track. They've got a Weekend Warrior that's there, and it's got some wrap on it and that kind of stuff with Halterman RV. And then you show up, and you just show up and race, and you got a mechanic and all that stuff. And it's the pro experience. And Justin Halterman had been doing that. Was an old motocross kid from way back when I first started racing. I've known Justin since he was a little guy, and he really wanted to give back to the sport, and he was able to do that now. And it's just super awesome to see him do that. So much good stuff. If you want to learn a little bit more about information, go down in the links. I'll have a link to the Pacific Northwest Racing Association. Jesse Photos provided us this one right here of Brayton Spangle on his way to a second or first place that moto. And of course, we want to also thank Gate Drop Productions for some of the photos as well. Awesome job to both of those photographers that do an outstanding job each and every weekend in the Pacific Northwest. Basically capturing the essence of the weekend and really making that event a much bigger event. It's really cool. Coming up next, we're going to have our Goggle of the Week. This week's Goggle of the Week is going to be our gray Comp Series goggle. This goggle is $39.99. We've talked about these goggles before. Comes with a tinted lens, soft flex frame, 2 layers of foam and a wick layer, 50 millimeter strap, 1 run of non-slip, and this is one of the best fitting goggles that you can put on your face. If you're an old school guy like myself and you like the Scot 89s, these have like a Scot 89 feel to them. If you're not an old guy like me and you don't know what Scot 89s are, they were a great goggle back in the day. And so the goggle of the week this week is our gray Comp Series Viral Brand goggle. Head to your local dealer to pick one of these up today, or go to shop.theviralbrand.com and you can pick a setup and have it delivered right to your door. Coming up next is our Dealer of the Week, and our Dealer of the Week is going to be Kiser Motorcycles on Kona, Hawaii. Kiser is a great dealer. They do a ton of volume with us, and they are one of our best dealers in the United States, and they're on a small little island. And over there, Viral is huge. So if you head to Hawaii, stop by Kiser Motorcycles on Kona and pick up a set of Viral Brand goggles for your adventures in Hawaii. All right, next week's episodes, we don't know who the guest is going to be. We don't. We haven't got a guest net for next week. So but we will put somebody together here pretty quick. And we're going to talk Washington State motocross history, which will be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about the next round of Supercross. We're going to talk to David Hogan again. We're going to have another Goggle of the Week and much, much more. So again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I want to thank Always Naked for the intro and outro. And as I've said before, if you haven't checked out their new album, check out their new album, Sex Sells. It's down in the links below. Don't forget to subscribe. Whoop, right about here. Subscribe to our channel. It's really important that you subscribe. It helps us a ton, and you don't ever miss an episode. We've got some great guests coming down the line. We don't have one for next week, but we have a bunch of ideas and people that we've been talking to. And like Denny Stevenson, who was on today, we definitely want to have cool and interesting people come on the Viral Nation show. Whether they wear viral or not, we don't care about that. We just want to have interesting people and talk moto or off-road or whatever in the near future. So thanks again for tuning in, and we hope to see you here, same bat time, same bat station, right here at the Viral Nation.
Waking up